On this Saturday night, horrific hate crime caught on camera.
We are seeing unprovoked assaults continue to happen in the city.
The latest in a disturbing wave of random attacks in Vancouver and the plea for help from police. Plus, no relief for pocketbook pain.
Restoring price stability will take some time.
Consumers continue to take the hit on inflation, interest rates, and even tips. A tall glass of tap water.
It's definitely a whole new world for us.
The decades-long journey for a BC First Nation to get clean drinking water. And inspiring Muslim athletes. A Stanley Cup champion brings hockey's greatest trophy to a hometown mosque.
To bring this big shiny trophy back to my hometown, it's really come full circle.
Global National with Farah Nasser. Reporting tonight, Tracy Tong.
Good evening and thank you for joining us. We begin tonight in Vancouver, where police are alerting the public about another unprovoked assault. This one took place during the city's Pride weekend and is being investigated as a hate crime. Attacks on strangers appear to be on the rise in the West Coast city, with more than 10 a month reported to police since March, and residents are on edge. Catherine Urquhart reports.
Surveillance video captures a vicious, unprovoked stranger attack outside an East Vancouver convenience store. A drink is thrown on the 42-year-old victim, who is then repeatedly punched and kicked by three young men. Two women watch. Police say the victim had just bought a Slurpee after celebrating Pride Week. It's just the latest unprovoked attack in Vancouver this year.
And we do believe that it was motivated by hate. This happened during Pride Week, and I understand that the suspects did utter some homophobic threats to the victim during the attack.
Last week, police arrested a 21-year-old man after a 54-year-old woman was viciously attacked inside her home. Investigators then linked the suspect to three stranger assaults. One involved a woman being stabbed.
I think it's really scary. I mean, I've lived here most of my life and felt quite safe, even, you know, in my 20s, living on my own, and now I'm kind of freaked out to go at night.
Between March and June alone, police have dealt with 44 stranger assaults.
Generally speaking, I can tell you that in these cases that we're seeing in Vancouver, repeated serial, random, violent, unprovoked attacks, mental health is a huge factor.
Earlier this summer, another random assault made headlines. On the downtown east side, a man armed with a machete attacked four people in his rooming house, leaving them with life-altering injuries. Now, as police investigate the latest unprovoked attack and hate crime, a plea for help.
We need people that stopped and watched to also come forward so we can get a full picture of what happened.
That plea coming as the public's frustration and fear mounts with every assault. Catherine Urquhart, Global News, Vancouver.
The Quebec government has announced plans to invest $250 million over 5 years to hire more police officers in Montreal and combat gun violence across the province.
We sense that with the events that occurred this week and in the previous weeks, we needed to have an exceptional and important gesture and investments to make sure that we have more police officers on the streets. Montrealers want to see more police officers on the streets.
The announcement comes after Quebec Premier François Legault vowed to restore order and protect citizens following a spate of shootings in recent months, including 2 daylight shootings on Tuesday in Montreal. $45 million is earmarked to bolster the presence of police in the city. $200 million is set to strengthen a province-wide crackdown on the gun trade. Well, last month, the annual inflation rate dropped to 7.6%, taking some of the heat off Canadian household budgets. But south of the border, Americans are still looking for a break, and it likely won't happen anytime soon. In an eye-opening speech, the chairman of the U.S. Federal Reserve warned consumers will experience more pain before things get better. Jennifer Johnson explains.
With prices skyrocketing on just about every consumer good, from groceries to gas, Americans are desperate for relief, but it won't come anytime soon. The Federal Reserve Chair is warning there will likely be more interest rate hikes next month to try and stabilize the economy.
Restoring price stability will take some time and requires using our tools forcefully to bring demand and supply into better balance. They will also bring some pain to households and businesses.
With that news, Wall Street immediately tanked. Small business owners are feeling the pain too, even places like ice cream shops, because dairy prices are higher than ever.
We have to pass that on to the consumer. We can't absorb all that, as a company and be able to stay afloat.
The Federal Reserve has already raised interest rates twice since June. Financial experts say now is the time to try and pay down what you owe.
You really want to try to whittle down your credit card debt as much as possible because those rates are going to continue to go up.
Mortgage rates continue to rise too. Home sales have dropped for 6 straight months as potential buyers do the math and realize they can no longer afford to buy what they want.
You know, that honeymoon ended and it's a different market today.
President Joe Biden continues to downplay concerns and dismissing critics who say his new student loan forgiveness program will further drive up inflation. The president is promising just the opposite will happen.
You got people who are in fact now going to be freed up to be able to go borrow money to buy a home, to be able to start businesses, to do the things that need to be done.
As inflation remains at its highest level in 4 decades, consumer spending has stalled. It barely rose in July. Buyers are holding on to their money until prices finally start to fall again. Jennifer Johnson, Global News, Washington.
Well, as inflation continues its upward trend, Canadians have noticed another part of their everyday life getting more expensive. A phenomenon known as tip creep or tip inflation has become common across the country. From takeout to hair salons and restaurants, the expected gratuity amount has gone up, and some experts say it's here to stay. And Gaviola explains.
Tipflation means you're being asked for a gratuity in places you've never been asked before, and the amount is higher than it used to be.
A lot of people are already upset with the fact that the cost of living is so high. They go to the grocery store, they pay more. They go to the gas station, they pay more. And now they're picking up something that normally they just threw $1.50 on the table for, and they're being asked to tip for it.
According to Restaurants Canada, 44% said they were tipping more when dining out than pre-pandemic. Women more likely than men to be ponying up extra for gratuities. Those aged 55 and up most likely to be more generous, and people in Ontario and BC lead the country in increased tipping. Because the hospitality industry was disproportionately hammered during the pandemic, with many workers' livelihoods disrupted, there's a new appreciation for service workers.
These days, 15% is the bare minimum.
15 to 20% is normal, and over 20% or even 30% is what you would give for exceptional service.
Some of this is due to technology. With an increasing number of payments going digital, merchants can add a tip prompt, and many are doing so for the first time. This can be a percentage of the total amount, including tax, which can boost the gratuity. Personal finance expert Barry Choi says tipping should be in line with the service you're getting. Your hairstylist may get more than a barista, for example.
If you're only just coming in, grabbing your food and leaving, and there's no service involved, I don't think you should feel shame or embarrassed if you're not going to leave a tip in that scenario.
But if tipping extra for service in a restaurant is a financial stretch for you, he suggests cutting back on the number of times you dine out rather than on the amount that you're tipping.
It's way easier for you to make changes to your budget to reduce your spending than someone who might be working a minimum wage job where they are depending solely on that income just for the bare necessities.
Some say employers shouldn't pass the buck for living wages onto consumers already dealing with inflation at multi-decade highs. Anne Gaviola, Global News, Toronto.
Well, with the return to school coming soon, some parents are calling for the expansion of booster eligibility for their kids. Health Canada approved the shot for children aged 5 to 11 last week. But many parents are still struggling to find a third dose for their kids ahead of the fall. As Shalima Maharaj explains, that's pushed some to cross the border in search of the vaccine.
We really wanted to have the protection from a third dose before school starts, especially because we're at a point in the pandemic where, I think a lot of other protection measures aren't going to be in place this year.
So the mother of two took her son south of the border to get the shots he's currently ineligible to receive in Ontario.
I have seen a few people, really through Twitter, who had mentioned to me that this is an option, going to Ogdensburg to get the vaccine. We didn't really want to do that. We assumed that it would eventually be open in Ontario, so we kind of waited and waited and waited.
Gibbs, who ran for the Ontario Liberals in June's provincial election, posted this photo to Twitter, calling out the government for a delayed rollout of third doses. Global News reached out to the Ministry of Health requesting an interview with the minister and received this response. We are reviewing NACI's most recent guidance and will be providing details for booster shots for this age group in the coming days. Last week, Health Canada gave Pfizer's booster the stamp of approval to be used on kids 5 to 11. On Wednesday, Manitoba expanded its eligibility criteria for the third dose to include that age group.
By protecting them, we are also protecting families.
Epidemiologist Nazim Muhajirin supports the expansion of third dose eligibility criteria.
Just as we don't question about putting a seatbelt on when we get into a car, I don't think that we should be really second guessing, whether we need a vaccine at this point in time. It is our insurance policy against any threat to our well-being.
As for Katie Gibbs,
our kids are still in daycare and going to school, but we want to take any extra levels of protection that we can.
Shalima Maharaj, Global News.
The federal government is warning Canadians to be cautious while visiting Pakistan, as that country deals with deadly flooding. Pakistani officials say nearly 1,000 people have been killed, and thousands more have been injured or displaced since the monsoon season began in mid-June. The crisis has forced the government to declare a state of emergency and to ask for international help to deal with the damage. Monsoon rains are expected to continue in the coming days. And coming up, breaking down barriers for a new generation of diverse scientists. Plus, the lasting legacy of the Stanley Cup's visit to an Ontario mosque. Stay with us. A group of student scientists in Halifax are working to get the next generation of Black and Indigenous youth interested in ecology. Through workshops and fair compensation, they hope to turn the tides on a field that is predominantly white and full of barriers for many people of color hoping to break into the discipline. Ashley Field reports.
These brothers are getting their hands dirty, learning all about an animal they've been fascinated with for as long as they can remember.
I dissected a shark. I basically saw its liver and its stomach.
It was really fun because it's my first time opening one.
So this is a spiny dogfish.
It's a hands-on experience made possible through Diversity of Nature, an outreach organization for BIPOC youth.
As scientists in this position of privilege, one of the best things we could do to help elevate racialized members of the community was to share science with them.
The group facilitates workshops and programming led by BIPOC science students to help break down barriers and provide role models for racialized youth interested in the field.
Often in science, we tend to see one type of person reflected as a scientist. What we want to show these kids is that anyone can be a scientist, even people who look like them.
People of color within that North American contingent, there's very few. There's several sizable barriers that exist for people to get in the field.
A lack of representation, a big one, he says, but so too is the field's reliance on unpaid work.
There's a lot of people that could potentially be interested in the field, but they don't have the resources to make that entry step.
Back in 2020, he and more than 700 other marine mammal researchers signed a petition taking a stand against unpaid positions, a barrier they say unfairly targets those who don't have the resources.
As many of my friends from wealthier backgrounds were able to volunteer their time in labs, I was lifeguarding. And this is a story that I've heard from many racialized scholars and scholars from low-income communities.
Massey, now hoping to be a part of the change, ensuring all educators here, like undergraduate student Aaron Judah, are fairly compensated.
A lot of us have had different experiences, whether it's not being fully, trusted with stuff or being underestimated. But now we have amazing leaders around the world from these communities really showing just how powerhouse diverse scientists can be.
Remember to always push it away from you.
Providing opportunities for both current students and potential future ones. Ashley Field, Global News, Halifax.
Ahead, an emotional drink. The long road a BC First Nations community took to finally tap in to a clean water supply. Well, after decades of waiting, some residents of the Cowichan tribes, the largest single First Nation band in British Columbia, finally have clean drinking water. Members of the First Nation on Vancouver Island have been living there since the 1940s. But as Kylie Stanton reports, the community has never had potable water, despite being just 2 kilometers from the nearest city.
As water pours from this tap, it's almost hard to believe.
Have a drink, baby.
For residents living on 20 properties along Indian Road in Cowichan tribes, this is a first.
It's been a long time coming, that's for sure.
Yeah, it was unbelievable for me. I got pretty choked up about it. It's just like, wow, I can't believe it. We're here. We can drink water from our own tap.
Baba Kwashimit has relied on either well or bottled water his entire life. More than 3 decades of it spent in Cowichan, raising his family. What he says had its challenges.
You couldn't even consider drinking it. It was fizzing like pop when it came out of the tap.
Want another drink?
His daughter has since been raising her children under the same conditions. The water only suitable for laundry and bathing on good days.
Having to use bottled water for everything from cooking dinner to like bathing our babies to, making a jug of juice had to come out of a bottle. It's definitely a whole new world for us.
Something so simple, so many of us take for granted, is something to celebrate here. The community marking the milestone with a ribbon-cutting ceremony on Friday.
When we think about water that's not safe for our community to drink, we think of this happening in rural communities, but really it's here, and we're, the biggest nation here in BC, and we don't have clean drinking water for our people.
The homes are located here, neighboring the city of Duncan, just 2 kilometers away. But it's taken decades of work to finally land the necessary federal funding to make clean drinking water a reality.
I think that it's really good for people to be aware of and not take advantage of things that they do have, the luxuries that they do have.
There is still work to be done. Roughly another 20 homes have yet to secure access, and there's currently no timeline as to when that's expected to happen.
My heart goes out to those that are still having to live that way, because I know what that was like. So
still, there are no grudges here.
Yeah.
Only gratitude.
Forever grateful.
Kylie Stanton, Global News.
Next, conquering the Rubiks Cube. How these Calgary siblings are taking their skills to a global stage. Nazem Kadri brought hockey's biggest prize back to his hometown of London, Ontario today, celebrating with family, friends, and close-knit fans. Kadri is believed to be the first Muslim player to become a Stanley Cup champion. Now, before kicking off a parade, he took the cup to the London Muslim Mosque, which is minutes away from where 4 members of the Afzal family were killed and another boy was injured in a hate crime in June last year, and is the same mosque the family attended.
These are the streets I used to run around as a kid, and to bring this big shiny trophy back to my hometown, it's really come full circle. And I just thank you guys for being here with me.
It is believed to be the first time the Stanley Cup has ever been inside a mosque in its 124-year history. Kadri, who began his career with Toronto, has signed with the Calgary Flames after winning the Cup with the Colorado Avalanche. He says he wants the moment to act as inspiration and motivation for the next generation of Canadians. Now to the Canadian siblings who have managed to conquer one of the world's best-known puzzles. Eric Ismail, who is 9, can solve the Rubiks Cube in just 12 seconds. His sister Zora, born with one hand, can do it in about a minute and a half. Our Jamie Dahl spoke with the Calgary kids who first picked up the cube during the pandemic, and to their father, a doctor treating Alzheimer's, about the cube's benefits beyond the fun.
7 years old in the middle of a pandemic, Eric Ismail picked up his first Rubiks Cube.
He borrowed one from...
Oh, from a neighbor.
He borrowed one from a neighbor.
It was two-sided.
I learned how to solve that easy peasy.
It was really stiff and hard, but it just reminded me of, over 30 years ago when I did a little bit of cubing.
My dad told me that when he was little, he could solve the big ones like these with 3.
Before long, he was faster than me, and then twice as fast, and then 3 times as fast.
And then you were left in the dust.
So much in the dust.
Now 9, he's been to 2 competitions, one in Sweden and one in Edmonton. He studies videos and researches algorithms, constantly trying to get faster.
My record is 12.94, so that's 12 seconds.
Everywhere he goes, he brings a cube. I'm always like, I can solve it too.
Eric's sister Zora can solve it in under a minute and a half. Born with just one hand, but she doesn't let that get in her way of anything.
I ride horses and I do gymnastics. I'm a normal human. I can do what everyone else can do, if not better.
I don't usually say this, but in my mind, I think that's actually really cool how she can solve it with one hand.
Now she's striving to catch up to her little brother's cube record.
Definitely to be faster.
When they have their cubes and it draws a bit of a crowd, they feel proud of themselves and each other.
Yay. It's more than just a fun hobby. When he's not cubing with his kids, Dr. Zain Ismail is an Alzheimer's specialist.
Frankly, the best prevention starts at this age, when you build cognitive reserve and brain reserve.
With cubing?
With cubing, with enriched activities, with sports, with bilingualism.
Eric now has his sights set on making it to the finals in competition. And the siblings are already teaching their youngest brother how to solve puzzles. Jamie Dahl, Global News.
Wow, that is so impressive. And that is Global National for this Saturday night. I'm Tracy Tong. Tonight's Your Canada is this field of sunflowers in Dugald, Manitoba. We love seeing Your Canada, so please keep emailing your photos to viewers@globalnational.com. Thanks for watching. See you again tomorrow. Have a great night.